Hi, I'm Hans Wilhelm. Today I will take you on a very interesting journey. It is a passage from a human being to a God-man or a God-woman. It is a return to the divine state that you and I have once been, as I have explained in many of my videos.
With our selfishness and our ego, we have created a lot of disharmony in the world, and most of all, within ourselves. With our selfish thoughts and actions, we have, over time, enveloped ourselves with self-created soul garments and gradually became the rigid form of the human being. We also know that God wants us to return home, back to the absolute reality. So throughout the course of our lifetime here on earth, the Spirit, or love, gives us the chance to recognize our present condition and to change it. Unfortunately, many of us keep ignoring these signs. But just imagine what could happen if we suddenly decide to turn around and strive toward what is good and loving. Such a change of attitude can do amazing things for our body and most of all for our soul. Because once we purify ourselves from all base drives, our soul would come into a higher vibration again. And that is the fascinating journey of becoming a God-man or a God-woman. Where does this journey begin? Right here in our head. The seat of our soul is in the vicinity of the pituitary gland. Every time we truly want to change for the better, the core of being in our soul, the primordial power or love, begins to pulsate more intensely. Together with our guardian spirit, here, it gently draws our attention to our errors and weaknesses in our conscience. But where is our conscience? It is here in the cerebrum, right under the skull. Here are many highly sensitive cell membranes that vibrate much more easily and rapidly than the other brain cells. As the biologist Bruce Lipton points out, the cell membrane is functioning the same as a computer chip. It is a liquid crystal semiconductor, and these particular cells form our conscience, which also consists of our emotional responses to our past life reviews. Whenever we have to make a decision that involves our conscience, these cells are touched first by the primordial power, the core of being in our soul, and the guardian spirit. These cells then become something like a policeman for us. As soon as we truly want to turn to the good and to love, the polarity of these cells reverses, which means they are now oriented towards the divine flowing ether power. Now it is possible for the Spirit of God to make us aware of our unlawful aspects time and time again. Consequently, the core of being in our soul, the primordial power, which is love, and had been largely dormant thus far, now becomes more active. Firstly, it attracts increased ether powers from infinity at night, while we are asleep. These powers of God then flow into the soul and spread out into our physical body via the consciousness centers or chakras. The more we listen to our conscience, the more the inflow of the ether powers will increase. And with more positive thoughts and deeds, these brain cells that make up the conscience come into even higher vibration. This vibration is then transferred to the deeper lying cell layers, mainly those of the cerebrum. Once this part of the brain mass has been purified in this way, we have left our first major struggles behind. Hooray! We now respond more easily to the inflowing ether powers and to the admonishing voice or signals of our guardian spirit. Through these increased divine gifts, the mass of our soul now begins to expand. It gradually covers the head and the upper half of the face. At the same time, the consciousness centers, or chakras, also expand. It starts with a low center, the consciousness center of order, which is anchored in the coccyx region, and then to the next one, which is will, then wisdom, earnestness, patience, love, and mercy on the top of our head. I have explained these consciousness centers in a special video, but let me repeat the following here. These 7 wheels of consciousness are nothing other than the 7 garments with which the soul has enclosed itself through an unlawful way of life. The more we devote ourselves to God and love, the more the reversal of polarity takes place and the more spiritual powers flow into our soul and into our brain cells. It is a pulsating and vibrating energy, which means that through the control centers, the brain, little by little, the entire body comes into spiritual divine vibration. These highest potentiated ether powers radiate more and more intensely into the expanding soul and into the body. So the existing garments which formed these 7 wheels of consciousness, the chakras in the human body, now dissolve to the same extent that the soul expands and covers the person from above, from the head to the neck, the chest, and finally the whole human being. At first, the consciousness center of order in the area of the coccyx dissolves completely. It is replaced by this first prism stream that gradually develops into a white ether flame, which flickers along the spinal column and unites with the core of being in the soul. In the ancient Hindu teachings, this flame is called Kundalini Flame. But I like to mention that Christian mysticism does not advocate opening this sacred flame through some intense yoga, breathing, or meditation techniques, but only by changing from our past negative behavior to a God-filled behavior, because it requires a highly ethical and moral character to be able to handle this new intense energy source in us. Through this process of reversion of polarity and of spreading over the body, we will be flooded by the divine ether power more and more strongly. This is a developing of the God-man or God-woman. Eventually, we will notice other processes like the streaming of the spirit as expanding energy pathways and an upward flickering of the flame. Now such God-person has not only learned to control himself, the elements within his body, but also the elements in the cosmos. All the spirit powers of the mineral, plant and animal kingdom serve such a human being, whose body obeys him, because he has fully unfolded his soul, and therefore the 4 elements of fire, water, earth and air now obey him.
We have total freedom to decide when to walk this path of absolute surrender of self and the devotion to the Godhead. We were given many tools, teachings, help and guidance from the spiritual world for this journey. And one of them is this magnificent book called Recognize and Heal Yourself Through the Power of the Spirit. The material I used for this video comes mainly from this book, but the book goes into much greater details than I was able to do in this video. You can find a link to this book on my recommendation page on lifeexplained.com. Until next time, be blessed and be well.